Welcome, friends. I'm Jennifer Jones, Vice President of the American Association of Kidney Patients, coming to you from the great state of Virginia for this year's Are You OK virtual education event, recognizing today, May 1st, as National High Potassium Awareness Day. On behalf of the AAKP, it's my pleasure to kick us off. For those who may be unfamiliar with the organization, the AAKP is the oldest and largest and fully independent, patient-led kidney patient organization in the nation. Since 1969, AAKP has been driving policy discussions on kidney patient consumer care choice and treatment innovation. Our mission is to improve the lives and long-term outcomes of all kidney patients through education, advocacy, patient engagement, and the fostering of patient communities. This Awareness Day was founded by the AAKP to bring the important topic of high potassium, also known as hyperkalemia, to the forefront of kidney patients' minds. Since 2020, AAKP has been educating millions of people about the risk of hyperkalemia and the availability of innovative treatments to prevent the most devastating impact of this condition. For this year's awareness campaign, AAKP continued to vigorously expand our reach and educational resources so kidney patients, their medical teams, and our allies across the kidney community can support this national grassroots movement to continue to mark May 1st, 5.1, as National High Potassium Awareness Day. As a kidney patient myself, I've learned the importance of knowing and understanding my lab values and following a kidney-friendly diet that's right for me. This Awareness Day is meant to help you gain more knowledge so that you can feel empowered to properly manage your potassium intake. My friends, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. And of course, take some notes so you can put what you learned today into action tomorrow. Before we get started, here's a brief message from our National High Potassium Awareness Day, Are You OK campaign and virtual event sponsor, AstraZeneca.
You got to realize when you're hearing that you have chronic kidney disease, you think you have a death sentence. That's not the truth. There's people out there going through the same thing that you're going through, and there's people out there that can help you get through it.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, for getting us started. I wanted to extend a heartfelt welcome to all of you who have joined us to recognize National High Potassium Awareness Day. Did you know that approximately 3.7 million adults in the U.S. have experienced hyperkalemia? Shockingly, over 48% of those individuals also had chronic kidney disease and/or heart failure. This alarming statistics prompted the AAKP to launch the Are You OK campaign and designate May 1st as National High Potassium Awareness Day. By using the scientific symbol for potassium, K+, along with the familiar phrase, Are You OK? This campaign aims to empower those with kidney disease to monitor their potassium levels. A potassium level of 5.1 may be considered a sign of high potassium, known as hyperkalemia. That's why May 1st, 5.1 is such a crucial date for this annual Awareness Day. As you listen to today's presentations, I hope you will glean valuable insights from our subject matter experts on the importance of managing your potassium level. I urge you to share the knowledge you gained today with your friends, community, and networks. Spreading awareness about high potassium could truly make a difference and even save lives. To begin our program, as we all know, diet and nutrition play a crucial role in helping to manage kidney health and preventing co-related complications associated with kidney disease, such as fluid overload or increased nutrient levels like phosphorus, and our subject today, potassium. By making informed dietary choices that are right for your needs, individuals can support optimal kidney function and improve their overall well-being. In the weeks running up to today's webinar, AAKP launched a food and nutrition flash survey through our Center for Patient Research and Education, and I'd like to share some of those results. Survey participants included individuals across the kidney disease spectrum, from CKD to dialysis to transplant recipients. An impressive 81% of respondents reported being advised by their doctors to adjust their diet due to kidney disease. On our next slide, we found that potassium and sodium intake emerged as the top two nutrients patients were instructed to keep an eye on. Survey respondents rated themselves a solid 4 out of 5 for their ability to stick to a kidney-friendly diet, which is encouraging. Despite the importance of consulting with a dietitian specializing in kidney disease to kickstart a healthy eating plan, only a little more than half of respondents had ever met with one. A whopping 92% of respondents said they read food labels to spot hidden potassium and phosphorus in packaged foods, a crucial habit for kidney patients. Overall, the survey results show that kidney patients are making strides in following a kidney-friendly diet. But the big question remains, are others doing their part too? A recent proposed rule by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has stirred concern within the kidney community. This rule, if approved, would allow the use of potassium-based salt substitutes in foods that meet specific standards of identity, which dictate the ingredients permitted in popular foods like bagels, crackers, and pasta. Currently, food manufacturers are prohibited from using salt substitutes in these products due to regulations that specifically require the use of table salt. AAKP, along with our allied partners at the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the National Kidney Foundation, issued a joint statement opposing implementation of this proposed rule by citing the negative impact this will have on kidney patients, particularly minority populations who have historically faced higher rates of kidney disease, as well as people of lower income status and food insecurity. While AAKP and our allies support the FDA's efforts to reduce sodium intake for overall health benefits, there is widespread concern throughout the kidney community about the risk of these changes, since salt substitutes commonly include potassium chloride. For people with chronic kidney disease, an increase in potassium level can lead to serious health issues like cardiac arrhythmias and heart failure. In the February 1st issue of Epoch Health, AAKP's Medical Advisory Board Chair, Dr. Stephen Fadum, and AAKP's Chair of Policy and Global Affairs, Paul Conway, urged the FDA to consult with the kidney community before moving forward with this proposal. They emphasized the importance of protecting kidney patients and taxpayers from any potential health risks that could arise from overlooking the needs of this vulnerable population. You can read their comments by going to the links now showing on your screen. You can also access additional articles published on this issue, as well as read the joint letter submitted to the FDA by AAKP, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the National Kidney Foundation via the links now showing. With this crucial issue facing America's kidney patients, AAKP asked a final question within our flash survey. If the FDA amended current standards of identity for food manufacturers that permitted the use of potassium-based salt substitutes in foods for which salt is a required or optional ingredient, do you feel this decision would negatively impact individuals with complex medical conditions, such as kidney disease and heart disease, who are required to monitor their potassium intake due to their increased risk of hyperkalemia or high potassium, which can cause cardiac arrhythmias and sudden cardiac death? An overwhelming number of respondents, more than 70%, said yes. This National High Potassium Awareness Day, AAKP wants you to make your voice heard on this important issue. After today's live event, visit AAKP's Action Center, where with a click of your mouse, you can send a letter to your representatives, making them aware of your opinion on this proposed rule, and send a letter to the FDA urging them to halt this proposal and do their due diligence by speaking directly with important kidney community stakeholders. By raising your voice on this issue, you can help stop a prime negative example of a government determinant of health, where government makes a uniform decision, whether known or unknown, at the risk of the people they are supposed to serve. Without further ado, let's kick things off by giving a warm welcome to our first speaker and good friend, Anna Marie Rodriguez. Anna Marie has worked as a nephrology dietitian for over 25 years in a variety of settings, from clinical to pharmaceutical, including sales, education, and renal medical affairs. She is currently an independent consultant, the owner of Nutrition Directions LLC, and employed by Pentec Health as a renal clinical retention specialist. She has served and chaired several boards, including the South and Central Texas National Kidney Foundation Medical Advisory Board, San Antonio Council of Renal Nutrition, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Renal Practice Group, and several groups within the Dietetic Practice Group. Anna Marie is no stranger to AAKP. She was an original reviewer of AAKP's popular Delicious program, which features over 100 kidney-friendly recipes. Anna Marie, I turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you so much, Jerome. I am so elated to be here and to share our time. Are you okay? Potassium Awareness Day is finally here. I am really, really happy to share this time with AAKP and Chef Nina, who we'll see shortly. So let's go. Are you okay? As I said, really excited to be here. And what exactly is the buzz on potassium? What is this all about? Well, there's so much to talk about, and I'm going to try to squeeze it all in. So we'll go at a little bit of a rapid pace because we want to enjoy some cooking as well. But potassium is an essential mineral from our food, and it's located in almost all living cells. So it's widespread in our food, just like phosphorus. We see potassium in a wide variety of foods. And that's what makes it a little bit difficult to control because it's virtually everywhere. It is largely regulated by our kidneys. And for the most part, our kidneys do a very good job regulating this. But as kidney function starts to decline, then potassium is not eliminated as well, along with other wastes. So it's important to know what our number is. And what makes this even more challenging, more difficult, is that not all food sources of potassium are created equal. So, of course, nothing is ever easy. It's always going to be complex. And potassium has many functions as well. It does regulate our cardiac muscle. Our heart muscle is indeed the most important muscle of our body. It helps all of our muscles work and function properly through nerve conduction. And as I mentioned, because our kidneys largely eliminate the excess potassium, that's not problematic. But when kidneys start to decline in function, then potassium starts to build up and our heart muscle will take the hit. It will not function properly. As Jerome had mentioned, it can lead to arrhythmias or cardiac arrest. So it's very important to know what is our potassium level. A normal potassium level is 3.5 to 5.0. And what's more important is that it doesn't stay static. It can fluctuate from the morning to the night, depending on what we eat and what is our kidney function. So this makes it imperative to know what our number is, not just our potassium number, but what is our GFR? How do we know if we have high potassium or hyperkalemia? Our doctor can prescribe a simple blood test that will let us know exactly what is our potassium level. But it does make it so very important for us to know at all times, what is our GFR? What are the risks that we face? And what is our potassium level? I recently had my levels drawn. GFR is 77. I'm watching that like a hawk. And my potassium was 4.0. It's staying in a good place. So I'm very cognizant of this, and I want to watch that, and I hope you are too. So we want to minimize the risks of high potassium. And what's important to consider is the fact that potassium can become elevated from several items, not just food, but it can become elevated because of health conditions such as kidney disease, heart disease, wounds such as burns or even surgical tissue, when we go in for surgery and we have scars, that does influence potassium as well, but also from medications, blood pressure medications, heart medications. We have to be very careful of the medications that we take. If we take something over the counter, such as an NSAIDs, that can be damaging as well. So we have to be cautious at all times. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And this is also true for herbal remedies. Many times we want to take something that's known to be very healthy for the most part, but if our kidneys are starting to decline and cannot rid the excess potassium, then some herbal remedies that might be safe for the most part may not be safe for us. So it's always best to check with our doctor or our dietitian to see if indeed what we want to use for our health is actually safe. The Plateau diet is a very excellent tool to use for persons who have CKD stages 3 to 5 who are not on dialysis. This is a low protein diet, and it is also largely plant-based, which when we think about this, we sometimes feel a little intimidated by this because we have for many, many years considered plants to be associated with potassium. So anytime we think of plants, fruits and vegetables, we think potassium. So we get a little skeptical of this, but it's also very low in sodium and very high in fiber, which are both kidney protective. And that's what makes this in its entirety very kidney protective, very safe, and it allows for greater diet flexibility. Typically, as I said, our kidneys do remove the excess potassium. Our kidneys, as they start to decline, can be very sneaky because oftentimes when we have high minerals or elevated wastes in our blood, we do not necessarily notice it. We may not feel different at all. And that's true sometimes with hyperkalemia, which is high potassium. Oftentimes it can go unnoticed. We may not feel different at all. Kidney disease can be a risk factor for developing hyperkalemia in itself, and it can be life-threatening. So again, I urge you to know what your number is, know your risks, because ultimately the potassium is going to help with our nerve conduction, with our muscles, and our heart muscle is indeed the most important muscle we have. We have to safeguard this because without our heart, we don't have our life. So we have to monitor our potassium. So we might think, well, my gosh, if this is so life-threatening, why would we eat more fruits and vegetables? Well, the benefits are indeed there. It's kidney protective, but it comes down to knowing which fruits and vegetables are safe for us, knowing which items that we need to look out for. So I'm going to talk about 3 things. When we think about plant-based foods, they have natural alkali, which is very supportive and kidney friendly, but we have to think of fiber. Those high fiber foods are the most kidney friendly and the most safe. So that's one of the items that we'll talk about. This chart depicts the association between diet and acid-base balance. Foods that are high in dietary acid load can actually cause more damage to the kidneys, such as meats, eggs, cheese, whereas foods that are 0 or less, such as fruits and vegetables, are more rich in alkali, which are kidney protective. The trick is, as I said, to know which ones are safe. And it really does come down to fiber. Does this mean you can never eat any of the cheese or the meats? It means to limit, go down in serving sizes, and make sure that there's ample fruits and vegetables to keep the diet less acidic and more alkaline. Walking on this potassium balancing act is really tough. But as I mentioned, it comes down to knowing which foods are safe. These are examples of low and higher potassium lists. What makes this more difficult is that foods that are high in potassium are not necessarily on all of the higher potassium food lists. Let's use meat as an example. It's higher in potassium, but we don't necessarily see that on a high potassium list. What actually is the cutoff for high potassium? We can see that on the low potassium list, it's about 250 milligrams of potassium or less, whereas we want to start limiting those foods that have greater than 250 milligrams of potassium or more. And also, too, some other tips that I'm going to include is serving sizes. It's important to know what our serving sizes are. Typically, a half a cup is a serving size. Avoid dry fruits. Why? Because it's concentrated. The potassium in those dry fruits are very concentrated. Avoid juices. Why? There's no fiber in juice. Usually orange juice is the first thing that we think about to treat low blood sugar or hypoglycemia, but orange juice has no fiber. So this can become very problematic. It can be very dangerous because it'll elevate potassium very fast. And the other item is, again, as I mentioned, think fiber. The higher the fiber, the more safe it is, because the fiber will help eliminate the potassium in the stool. Sounds a little gross, but this is the way it works. I'm going to pick on tomato for a minute. A tomato is considered a high potassium food. It's often really hard to give up, especially when planting season, we start to harvest and we start to pick everything out of the garden. But a slice of tomato is not necessarily dangerous. So it's just making sure that we're walking that balancing, keeping on that tightrope and don't go over the edge. What would we consider a high potassium food? A really high potassium food would have 400 milligrams or more in it. And I often get asked, how much potassium can I have in a day? Typically about 2,500 to 3,000 milligrams. So if we think about that in the big picture, then that means about 700 milligrams a meal would be about safe. So keep that in mind. Our fruits and vegetables have the strongest power in preventing heart disease. And there's many studies that show just 800 milligrams, just 5 servings a day, are very powerful in preventing heart disease. And now we know that just those 5 servings also help in preventing disease progression, kidney disease progression. So it's very important to include fruits and vegetables. We don't want to be scared of them and not eat them at all. Just keeping in mind, we want to go high fiber. We want to know portion sizes. And I have one more trick that I'm going to help talk about as well. So minimum of 5 a day, keep that in mind. It's an old saying, but Americans have a really hard time getting those just 5 a day in. Not only are fruits and vegetables the powerhouse of our plate, but they're the powerhouse of our gut. They help keep the bacteria healthy in our gut. Sad but true, we all do have bacteria in our gut, but there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. But fruits and vegetables help create good bacteria, which helps eliminate the toxins that we see listed here that are now known that cause kidney disease progression. Fruits and vegetables help reduce protein in the urine. They create fewer uremic toxins. They reduce inflammation. They help strengthen the immunity. Overall, a healthy gut helps keep us stronger. And we all are pretty much familiar with TMAO. And for a long time, many years, we've known that TMAO is related with heart disease, but we now know that it's also related with kidney disease. In fact, it's considered a renal toxin. So as I mentioned, you're going to have this basically in your mind forever. The secret is fiber. And the reason why is most of the potassium is in the cell wall of the food item. So that is the plant matrix or the fiber. And that's what slows down the absorption of potassium from our gut. It's very difficult to get broken down. Potassium in unprocessed plant foods may not be up to 60% absorbed. So we must consider how much potassium is in a food item and then how much is going to be basically available for absorption. I'm going to pick on tomatoes again. Let's consider broccoli and tomato. Tomato is typically very juicy, and when we eat this, it's going to get broken down rather quickly. Thus, the potassium is going to be absorbed very quickly, whereas the broccoli doesn't get broken down as easily. It has a lot more fiber to it, so that potassium is going to be eliminated. The third item is be label savvy. I was really excited when Jerome showed the survey results and showed the great number of patients that are actually looking at the labels. And let me share that a couple decades ago, when I first started working with kidney disease, it was very, very difficult to know how much potassium was in store-bought goods because potassium was not on the label. But good news for us now, we can easily monitor how much potassium we're eating because it is indeed listed. So if we look at the nutrition label that's in the center, we can see that there's 640 milligrams of potassium. Remember I stated that 700 milligrams might be safe for a meal. So this might be pushing it to the edge, because we can see that this item was only going to give us 400 calories. It's probably not our whole meal, so it's probably not a good choice. Besides that, look at the sodium. Not a good choice. Beyond looking at the label, though, as I mentioned, not all foods are created equal. There's hidden sources as well. And even if the potassium is listed on the facts, the absorption is going to be almost 100% if the potassium is coming from additives. And this goes back to what Jerome was talking about earlier as well with salt substitutes, because salt substitutes, for the most part, almost always have potassium. So if you look at the label on it's going to be on your right, you'll see that potassium is listed several times. This might not be a good item to choose. So we must learn to check the ingredients for those hidden sources of not just potassium, but sodium, phosphorus, and calcium as well. This is where it gets very sneaky, because as I said, it gets absorbed. Why? It's not attached to fiber. It's not attached to anything. It's going to be what's called disassociated in the gut, and it's going to be absorbed almost immediately, almost 100%. We must think to individualization of the diet, and that goes to potassium as well. In the new guidelines in 2020, in regards to potassium, it states adults with CKD, stages 3 to 5, on dialysis and post-transplant, adjust dietary potassium intake to maintain serum potassium in the normal serum range. Well, this gives us a lot of flexibility, and this is very lovely, because now we can know we have room to adjust and include those delicious foods that are very heart healthy as well. And there's growing evidence that show that eating a more plant-based diet is beneficial in delaying the progression of kidney disease and improve survival. But as I mentioned, fiber is the key. It does help with potassium excretion. There are concerns with hyperkalemia, though, and typically when it does happen, it usually is associated with diet. It's usually because of juice or dried fruits or sauces, smoothies, things like that, where it's more concentrated. And in an article in 2010, Nori had stated that the top 5 sources of potassium in our patients' diets were beef, chicken, Mexican food, hamburgers, and legumes. But we don't always see these type of foods on high potassium lists. In fact, we rarely see meat products listed on high potassium lists, and that makes it a little bit tricky for us. And indeed, a pork chop will have more potassium than many fruits and vegetables. So we just have to be cognizant that meat can have just as much potassium, if not more, than many of the fruits and vegetables that we'd like to eat. And we also need to consider what are other sources of potassium that can cause hyperkalemia. What else can trigger this? Things like constipation, wounds. Remember, I stated earlier, like a burn or a surgical wound or skin tears. We must think of all the other ways that potassium can become increased. Starvation, all of those can lend to an increased potassium. It goes even further than that. If we are not confused enough, it has to be individualized even more. For patients that have CKD stages 3 to 4, whether they have had a transplant or on dialysis, the individualization is even more critical. For persons that have CKD stages 3 to 5, this depends on the stage of the kidney disease. What function do we have? Keeping our lab appointments, keeping our doctor appointments. We want to know what is our risk. That's very crucial to know. As our kidney function declines, we have to be more careful. For persons that have had a transplant, once the transplant graft is functioning, there typically is no potassium restriction, but this is not 100% true for everybody. This can vary in some individuals, and we must note that some transplant medications can actually cause hyperkalemia as well. And to make things a little bit more difficult, it varies even for persons that are on dialysis. Persons that are on in-center dialysis must be a little bit more cautious with high potassium foods, because the potassium can increase in between the dialysis sessions, and be attentive to lab results, because if the potassium level is already high, then that can be very risky. I want to mention, though, for persons that are on short daily home or nocturnal dialysis, they may not even have restrictions. So again, it's very individualized. And in persons that are on peritoneal dialysis may actually even see low potassium and may actually even need to use potassium supplements. So it is a very broad spectrum of what we need to be considerate of when it comes to potassium. And of note, there are now new, it's not exactly new, potassium binders that can be used just once a day. And this allows persons to have greater flexibility within their diet and still eat those delicious foods that are known to be both heart and kidney friendly. So we might wonder, how do we bring all this together? There's a little guideline by Dr. Joshi a couple of years ago. And if we look at how many servings of plant type of foods we can have in a day, we would see 2 to 4 servings of fruits, 5 servings of non-starchy vegetables, 2 servings of whole grains, 3 servings of legumes, and a couple servings of nuts. And for some people that have been warded off of plants because of potassium, they might feel overwhelmed by this, like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of potassium. But this is where we must learn swaps. This is where we must learn to make trade-offs, because if we look at those foods to exclude, such as processed foods, remember I said the processed foods that gets absorbed very fast, juices, meat, dairy, those have very high potassium. So for persons that are following a CKD stage 3 and up to 5, not on dialysis, very low protein diet, this is very easy to do because for the most part, meat is being eliminated from the diet. So this makes it very safe. But for persons who are on dialysis and who want to incorporate more plants, then I do suggest go a little bit slower, use gradual swaps. And while the swaps are taking place, so once a week up to once a day, monitor the blood work so that you can be sure that if there are changes in the blood work, you know what you can adjust. Incremental changes are much easier to manage, but even small changes make big differences. And that is where serving sizes really make an impact. So again, we're looking at fiber, we're looking at serving sizes, and then we're looking at the food labels. So we might wonder, well, how does this fit? What does this look like? Well, I made this graph a few years ago for my patients so we can see how many servings do we need a day, non-CKD, CKD, and then sample foods and serving sizes, and again, some little tips and how might this look in a menu. This is just a sample menu. And when I create a menu, it's usually 5 days of a menu, so it gives a nice broad view. So patients don't get bored eating the same things. They can swap out day to day. Makes it a little bit more exciting. So these are just a few samples. Ultimately, know your number. Normal potassium is 3.5 to 5. If it becomes mildly elevated, 5.1 to 5.5, stop. By all means, stop what you're doing and take an assessment. Medications, diet, what was your lab number before? What made it change from before to now? Just take note and talk with your doctor and your dietitian to make sure that you can make adjustments to get it back on track. Because once it hits 5.6 to 6.0, that's moderately elevated already. Our body can already start to experience some changes, but we won't feel it, not necessarily. Once we hit 6.0 or higher, that's severe. Our heart muscle will take the hit for that. So we must take care of knowing what that number is. Minimize your risks, stay informed. Go to the AAKP Healthline. There is a rich array of resources that you can utilize every day for every step of managing kidney disease. And if you want more specific information on potassium, there is an amazing amount of information on the National High Potassium Awareness Day site. And if you're wondering what you can safely eat, there is a ton of kidney-friendly recipes. And what's exciting about these recipes is a very broad variety of recipes that are kidney safe, kidney friendly, and they list the potassium, they list the protein, they list the sodium. Everything is made easy for you. So I urge you, go to the website, explore, conquer your obstacles, and take charge, empower yourself. So just to wrap up and summarize, a low protein diet for persons that have CKD stages 3 to 5 who are not on dialysis, using largely plant-based protein, is kidney protective and can be low in potassium. Plant-based nutrition is very beneficial on the gut, which lends to a reduction of toxins that we know are troublesome to our kidneys. Plant-based nutrition can be incorporated in the new 2020 guidelines, and this is very important to consider. Think fiber, because we want to know how much potassium is in the food, but how much is probably going to be absorbed. And beyond the fiber, consider those serving sizes. We must know exactly what is safe that we can use each time. And then finally, think of your safe swaps to manage your safe potassium intake, and look at those food labels. Not just the label for the facts, but the hidden sources, the ingredients. And that is all we've got, because we're going to start cooking. I am so excited to enjoy a cooking demo with Chef Nina. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna Marie, for that insightful presentation for our AAKP members and viewers. I am thrilled to introduce our next guest, Chef Nina Curtis. Chef Curtis is the Director and Executive Chef at Plantish and Company Culinary Arts, where she is a trailblazer in the world of plant-based cuisine. Recognized as one of the top 25 women in food services and hospitality in 2021, Chef Curtis is known for her innovative and exquisite approach to plant-based dining. With over 2 decades of experience, Chef Curtis has captivated both vegans and non-vegans alike with her culinary creations. She made history as the first guest chef invited by First Lady Dr. Jill Biden to create a plant-based menu for a White House state dinner. In addition to her culinary talents, she is a passionate advocate for plant-based living, sharing her knowledge through lectures and dining experiences. Her leadership roles and commitment to excellence, combined with her rigorous training and MBA from Pepperdine University, highlight her dedication to advancing plant-based cuisine. Today, Chef Curtis will be showcasing her skills in a cooking demonstration featuring a recipe from the AAKP Delicious series. If at any point during her cooking demonstration you have a question for our chef, please send an email to me at jbailey@aakp.org. Again, that's jbailey@aakp.org. We will try to get to as many questions as we can during this live broadcast. Let's step into Chef Curtis' kitchen and begin our exciting demonstration. Hi, Chef Curtis.
Hi, Jerome. Thank you for having me. Thank you and the AAKP team for inviting me to join you. I'm thrilled to be here on May 1st, and I'm so thrilled that there is a national day actually recognizing High Potassium Awareness Day, because I think it's very important for all of us. As it was said earlier, many of us have, if it's not us, we have friends and family members. And since I'm in food and I've studied nutrition, this is right up my alley. I've been a plant-based chef for over 20 years. I started in the kitchen at 8, and my dad's a chef, and I swore I'd never be a chef because I just felt, I'm not getting allowance. I don't know why I have to work this hard as he works, but never say never. We learned that in life. So sometimes people will say to me, oh, I could never go vegan, or I could never go plant-based. And again, I say never, because I came into a vegan diet and lifestyle through bodybuilding. And my body just stopped wanting. If we really listen to our bodies are telling us what it wants and what we need. And I find, as an advocate of whole plant-based foods, the more we listen to our body, the more we eat whole plant-based foods, more than I'm going to say processed foods, because all things are processed to a degree. Even working with these chickpeas, if I make a hummus, I've processed it it's still whole food, and it doesn't have a lot of added ingredients, and we call it scratch in the kitchen, in the commercial kitchen, but we have to be mindful. And Anna Marie is going to join me. Anna Marie, you can't get away that fast. I want you to come back with me because I really want to serve this. I think, we're so technologically advanced. Why can't I be able to make this salad for you and Jerome and everyone else tuning in? I know we're going to get there, and I hope we get smell-o-vision also, because all of these ingredients I'm working with, I mean, I get hungry, and people think in the kitchen you eat all day, but there's something going on in our brain and our sense that you're smelling all these foods. So I think in the limbic system, it must say you're satiated because there's not a scarcity of food. So my focus, and Anna Marie, I know you're going to also help field questions. And if anything comes through, I know we've presented before, and it's such a symbiotic work, and you presented so much great information, things that I know and don't know, but I think we have to constantly be aware of it and mindful of it. And this is a great day, since it's High Potassium Awareness Day, to really take some notes. I also know that the audience, our guests, welcome again, received the recipe. I am making today the basmati. I'm in California, so I'm going to say basmati spring summer salad, because we have seasons, but we can subtly go from spring into summer, and it's just a beautiful salad. And as Anna Maria said before, that the AAKP website, and I focus in on recipes, I went right there first, has such an abundance of recipes that you can choose from. I would challenge Anna Maria, our guest, to look at the recipes in a seasonal manner, because when we are able to eat more local and more seasonal to the best of our ability, I understand, to the best of our ability. I just went to our farmers market here in Sacramento on Sunday, and there was just, you just don't see the same produce, even in our best stores. It's just not there. You get to build relationships with the farmers, you get to support local, but we know from a nutritional point, the foods we eat, especially I'm focusing on plant based, right? So vegetables and fruits and nuts and legumes and seeds and grains, those things that we can get local or and in season are just going to be that much more nutrient available and nutrient dense. A tomato in winter tastes nothing like a tomato in the summer. And I know Anna Marie already told us to be careful about that juicy tomato that is a fruit, and we just want to bite into it when it's really at its highest. But with regards to that, I'm going to reiterate these things, because I know that Whole Foods, while I work in a commercial kitchen, and we are what we call a scratch kitchen, we are a Whole Foods kitchen. I've worked extensively with Blue Zones, which promotes a Mediterranean diet and longevity. When we know these things, we can just make better choices. I also write an article, a column about, what's on the ingredient label and identifying that. This salad that we're making today, and I say we because I don't do anything alone, even though I might be the one pouring everything in the bowl. This salad is going to serve 4. So what you're looking at, if you have the recipe up, it's going to make a servings of 4. So we talk about portions, because I can sit down with a whole big bowl of a salad that is meant for 4. And if I'm not careful, I might eat the whole thing. So portion control, portion mindfulness, let's say that, because control is kind of, it's like, oh, I've got to resist, or I don't get to have. So I think our choice and use of words is very important. So I'm going to say portion mindfulness. This should make 4 servings of salad, and each serving would contain, since we're talking about High Potassium Awareness Day, 397 milligrams of potassium. So we already know, Anna Marie, what you shared with us, we're in a safe space. This is a friendly kidney salad. This is a delicious kidney salad. Maybe we should just call it the kidney salad. And that, I don't know, I'm a marketer, I play with words. But let's get into this and see where we go. One thing I like to say about cooking, because some of you may be tuning in and go, I don't cook. I don't like to cook. I don't know how to cook. And this is the salad you can start with. You can dip your foot in the water, and I promise you, you'll be safe. But one of the things I find when I'm helping people come or feel more comfortable with cooking. It's not like you're going to get a grade. You're not going to get an A or F. You're not being tested here. This is just for our health and our mindfulness, is that you get all of your ingredients pulled. So I always say, look at the recipe, especially when it's the first time making it. So we want to look at the basmati summer salad recipe and read it all the way through. Take a look at it all the way through. Some things I noticed, fresh coriander leaves. And you're like, I've never seen that. Well, coriander leaves and cilantro leaves are the same thing. So you can mark a note there. You always see cilantro in your store. Coriander usually is referring to the seed. And if there are certain percentage of people that cilantro has this kind of, once they bite into it, the chemical action in the mouth can make it taste soapy. So I find if people don't like cilantro, I can effectively like put a little coriander seasoning in the dressing if you do want that flavor, or you could go to a mint. So if you're looking at this recipe, I'm going to walk us through, have all your ingredients already pulled. So if you don't have cucumber, maybe you'll do zucchini. If you see it safe on our list. The other thing I want to say about adopting a more abundant plant-based diet, plant-focused, plant-strong, is chewing. And I think we miss this point. Chewing is essential, because if you don't properly chew, if we don't properly chew our food, most of the time, because of the fiber, the insoluble and the soluble, insoluble fiber, it can cause us to feel a little bloated. It can, because it's really trying to work, it's magic. And if we've had a diet or we've eaten certain ways, it might feel uncomfortable as this food is trying to really cleanse and regenerate our body. I'll be careful with my words, but it is in fact scientifically how it works. So I want you to think about, if you make, and I hope you make this salad. I really hope you're like, by the end of this, inspired to get into this salad, because it's a good one. It's a hearty one. It will hold. So I can make the whole salad, and I can't get it to Jerome or Anna Marie, but I can have this for 4 days, and I can have it as its own. I can have it with maybe as a side salad with what else I'm eating. So as Anna Marie said earlier, you never get bored. But our first ingredients are going to be chickpeas. In the kitchen, in the commercial kitchen, we soak all of our legumes overnight to release the phytic acid, to help them swell, so that it is going to already be more digestible. If I can't run out into the, cafe hall where people are sitting and say, chew, 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 nobody wants the chef chasing you about chewing. But I do want to put that in your mind as mindfulness. So we're going to start with our chickpeas. I did, for the purposes of this demonstration, because I like to meet people where they are. You're going to either get your environmentally more friendly packaging, or a can of chickpeas. It calls in the recipe for 15.5 ounces. You want to drain and rinse. So you're going to take it out of the fluid. I want to look for no salt added. And more companies are doing that, but look for it. It could say low salt. We want no salt. So it's available, but pay attention to that. And then I just put it in a strainer, and I'm going to pour that liquid out, which is called aqua faba, because it's bean water. And in the plant-based world, we'll use aqua faba as an egg replacer to bake with. And so it has that same consistency. We can whip it up with peaks. It can do meringues. I'll digress, because we're talking about a salad right now, and I don't want everybody to get a sweet tooth.
But this is great information, because we don't think of that. This is something that so many people don't realize, and they don't consider the vitality behind the bean. It's wonderful. I want to point out something too.
Really, and it's really magic. So you can use that. You would just save the bean water, as we said, but you do want it to be no salt, right? And I'll put it in the refrigerator, and I specialized in culinary school in vegan and raw vegan desserts. I figured if I serve people desserts, no one would ask me where the beef was or where's the protein. And it usually works. So I'm going to keep going here because I get quite excited about food, making it and eating it. So I'm just going to pour my chickpeas in the bowl. And then the salad calls for cucumbers. This is a cup of cucumbers. And we know that all the ingredients in this salad are kidney friendly and delicious. I'm going to toss that together. And then I've taken celery. In this 1 cup, it was about 2 ribs of celery. And the cucumber I like to get the mini cucumbers. So it was to make 1 cup, it was about 2 cucumbers. Because when they say a cup of cucumbers, I know people always go, well, how much is that? And if you get a huge cucumber, you're going to probably get 2 cups. So you want to be mindful of not wasting and not cutting it all up. I'll cut it in half and see how much that makes. And then I can use the other half of the cucumber, if it's a large cucumber, to make slices and do things differently. Because the other thing that matters with plant-based food, it's all about the cut. If I cut dices versus slices versus grating, it's all going to have a different mouthfeel. And I learned this in school. And so I know how to also change up, even if you're eating, you like something, I'm going to say, what do you like? And if you like certain things, I'm going to teach you how to cut it differently. That's going to offer you a different mouthfeel and not seem boring, right? That's the key. I don't like to be boring. When I was little, I used to go to my mom and say, I'm bored. And she'd go, you're boring. Go find something to do. So I have this whole feeling about, I don't ever want to be called boring. Thank you, Mom. The other thing, we've got a half cup of red onions. In the recipe, it called for it to be minced, but I love red onions. I could, and I don't recommend this, I could almost eat them like a fruit. I'll just take, the slices of red onions and eat them. It's sweet. They're sweeter than white or yellow, but this is a half cup. So far we've used 15.5 ounces of the chickpeas, 1 cup of cucumbers, 1 cup of celery, and a half cup of the red onions. And then, so I wanted to have the slices because I want the crunch of it, and I want it to stand on its own versus mincing it. But if you don't like onions so much, mincing it will lessen the mouthfeel in your mouth. Again, going back to the cut matters. So that can be something you can do. And then I've just taken, as the recipe called for, mandarin oranges. And what I did with them, I supremed them. So I took off the pith on each side. This is what we do in the restaurant because it just has a different mouthfeel. And we're going to just put that in our salad. So you can see, if I'm not talking so much, it's very easy to put this salad together in a matter of minutes. And then I've got my basmati rice. So I pre-cooked my basmati rice. I don't buy the pre-cooked. I really try to minimize, again, where you can, as much packaged food. So even if you're buying packaged food, look for as whole food of a packaged food as you can. Somebody can say they're vegan and be a junk food eater and high potassium and high sodium. And so we want to pay attention to the label and the ingredients. I mean, potato chips, typically, if they don't have powdered milk and all the seasoning on top, would be vegan. Oreos are said to be vegan, but that doesn't mean we should eat a whole package because it's vegan. So, vegan labels, I think I really stress this because people think, oh, I'll just eat, I don't know, spaghetti my whole life. You have to have a rainbow of food. And this diet also offers that. With the rice, I washed it. And I know there's a lot of debate out there whether you need to wash your rice or not wash your rice. Okay, I'm telling you, I'm setting the record straight. Wash your rice.
That was going to be my question, Nina. I was going to ask you that. Do you like to wash your rice before prepping? So I'm glad you perked that.
And I'll tell you why. I mean, when we buy food, it sits on the shelf a while, unless you're getting it straight from the farmer, from the rice farm, and then the drying and processing of it, dust will occur. I mean, it's traveling. How far is it traveling? There are some studies, a few, not a lot, that have shown by washing the rice can help remove some of the arsenic if people are concerned about that. Not totally, but why not if it doesn't hurt? So I wash the rice. The main thing about this, if you want a sticky rice, you don't want to wash it as much, but you want to wash it. You want to, like with our legumes, just make sure there's no sand or debris that could be in this, because it is food, right? Or anything else. I won't go there, but anything else that could be in it. But the main thing with a rice that you want to use in a salad, you want to help remove the starch, because the starch is what keeps the rice sticky. And with regards to this, I've been able to cook it, and then I've just fork flaked it. So the rice falls apart. And that's what we really want to make sure, because you don't want, it's not trying to make a sticky rice recipe here. So you can see how easily it calls for coriander, right? But we are speaking about, we are speaking about cilantro. And you can use fresh coriander. So I'm going to just take the fresh leaves. I'm going to keep some to garnish. You can tear if it calls for
easy to grow. It's so easy to
Yes.
grow too.
Yes.
Herbs are
Yes.
so easy to grow. You can just put them in little pots outside your door or in a sunny spot in the house. I grow herbs in the most little crevices wherever I can put a little pot. So it's so helpful to have those handy.
Yes, and there's even, as you know, Anna Marie, herb grow kits where all you have to do is, just the pots are already there, the seeds are already there. I mean, some people say they don't have a green thumb, but you will have one. I just want to check in where we're at. Is everyone okay? Are we okay here? Is this interesting to you? I mean,
Yeah,
it's important.
you know what? There's 2 points I want to share, because it's really important too. When you were talking about, rinsing the beans, and I want to point out that chickpeas are one of the lowest potassium beans that we can use in our diet if we have kidney disease. So this is a very safe bean to incorporate in our food, in our meal. And also when we rinse the food, so we want to drain the fluid off anytime we're using a processed food or a canned food, or even if it's lightly, we want to drain the fluid off, because the longer it soaks, the more minerals will actually leach into the fluid. So by draining that off, you're going to get rid of some of the potassium that way too. So it's a win-win. Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's pointed out on the recipe. Anna Marie, do you think that it says in the recipe 12 hours? I think if you're not getting legumes with salt or any of that, it's a cleaner, if you will, if you're not cooking them from scratch. So, someone might be turned off. Oh, I have to soak them 12 hours. But then I would say soak them overnight if you want to, totally follow it. But what's your thought on that?
It really does come down to individualization. It really comes down to what people want to do. How do they want to prepare their food? What do they have time for? Do they like cooking? Some persons may not like to cook, and taking that readily available might be easier. I know for some people on dialysis days are so very tiresome, and all some people can do is just sleep afterwards. So to think about food preparation sometimes can be overwhelming. So having something that's quick and readily available might just be the trick. So again, it really comes down to what is going to work best for the individual.
Sure. But as we've both said, if you're not going to soak them as the recipe offers you to do, rinse and drain. At least don't just go from the container. I never do that anyway for anyone. You just want to get that off. So I don't know
it's
if
really
you can
safe.
see just,
it's beautiful. Oh,
salad, and tossed it. Look at how beautiful and colorful that is. You've got your red, your orange, your green. We have green. And then we're going to make a quick dressing. Go ahead. And the dressing is with lime juice. So citrus really helps when you're also trying to lower salt content, but because citrus, whether it's lemon or lime, brightens everything. So often, when I'm working with people that are trying to lower certain things, lime will be the trick, or lemon will be the trick, or a blend together. So that's calling for the recipe 1 tablespoon of lime juice, and then we have 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. I'm really into good olive oils, and I'm just going to whisk that. So now we have 2 tablespoons that's going to dress, as I say. I think people, saturate and drown their salads typically with dressing. We need to be mindful of our dressing. If you look on the back of the label with most dressings, it says 1 tablespoon. And sometimes people have used 1/4 of the bottle on just one salad. So I'm just going to drizzle this around. It says also in the recipe to add the fresh black ground pepper. I always like grinding it fresh and adding it afterwards so it doesn't get coated by the oil. I mean, it's okay, but I really like black pepper, so I'm just going to use some black pepper, fresh ground, and then you can really control how much you like. Because when I go to a restaurant and they say when, they just keep moving their arms looking up at me like, when are you going to say when, lady? And I'm like, keep going. And then again, we have, and I wish you could just smell it, everyone,
Oh,
Jerome and
I
Marie
feel like I
and our
can.
so good. And then it calls for uh, walnuts. And my trick is always taking walnuts, putting them in a skillet, turn it on medium high, let it get warm. Don't touch the skillet. Just know in about 3-4 minutes, it's enough. And just toss your walnuts in there and shake the skillet, because by roasting them, you're going to bring up all this umami, which is just going to be even. And when people are transitioning from a meat centric diet to a plant based diet, a lot of what they're craving and missing is the umami that's rich in the meat that doesn't have fiber. But nuts and seeds and so many plant based things have umami. Sometimes we just have to bring more of it up. This recipe is calling for 1/2 cup of walnuts. So I say to you, choose gingerly and add more as you like, because it's a crunch factor. And by toasting, it's even more crunch factor and more satiating. It tastes more, I'm going to use the term meaty, when you have all these beautiful vegetables to work with. And then I'm just going to use, I know for our purposes, spinach and kale can be recommended more as a kidney friendly leafy green, but you can also get
Kale.
microgreens. I just got these from the farmers market, and like kale microgreens. And while they are more nutrient dense, some say as much as 40% more nutrient dense than the actual, let's say, adult kale, they have been shown in a couple of studies I found to be lower in potassium. And they're crunchy, they're very delicate, but they bring a lot of flavor and then just that much more nutrient density. So, and you have lemon zest, lime zest, we're going to talk. So this is a zester. And I'm just going to, sometimes you see people do it, like this. So I'm just going to, again, we've got lime juice, and now we're using that lime zest. It calls for a 1/2 teaspoon, right? Yeah. But you go where you like. I mean, try it out. But it just gives you a lot of flavor, a lot of depth for your salad. And again, I can't express how
Oh,
beautiful this salad looks. But if you can see it, I can't wait for
it's
lunch. I'm
gorgeous.
sorry.
It is gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful.
And delicious. And delicious. There are over 20,000 edible plants in our world. So, about 90% of that, I mean, 20% of that represents 90 percent of what we're getting in our store. So I challenge you with the list that Anna Marie shared with you to try to get more of those fruits and vegetables that you're not used to trying. Eat in season, eat as local when it's possible to do, and to also look at the packaged goods, go for less processed. And I hope you enjoyed this.
This is so wonderful. Thank you so much, Chef Nina, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. As always, every time I get the chance to cook with you, even though I'm not with you, I am overjoyed. Thank you so much.
So thank you for having me again, everyone.
And I want to thank both Anna Marie and Chef Curtis for sharing your knowledge and tips with our AAKP members and viewers on National High Potassium Day. That salad looked amazing. So you can find today's featured recipe for the basmati summer salad within the 6th edition of the AAKP Delicious Recipe Series. A link to the recipe can be found in the confirmation email sent to you for today's webinar, as well as the AAKP website. An on-demand cooking demonstration of the recipe and many other recipes can be found on the AAKP Delicious YouTube channel. The AAKP Delicious program offers over 100 kidney-friendly recipes designed to help you prepare healthy and delicious meals that align with your kidney diet. Whether you are a patient or a family member, taking control of your healthcare through nutrition has never been easier. The best part? You can easily modify the recipe ingredients to suit your specific dietary needs. If you have any questions about incorporating AAKP's recipes into your daily routine, don't hesitate to consult your renal dietitian for guidance. And don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to enhance your cooking skills and improve your health. Purchase all 7 editions of AAKP Delicious today and start building your collection of kidney-friendly recipes that will leave your taste buds singing. This is AAKP's 5th year recognizing May 1st as National High Potassium Awareness Day and the Are You OK campaign. The campaign was initiated through AAKP's Center for Patient Research and Education, using grassroots efforts and the association's sophisticated global and national social media platforms to reach millions of at-risk Americans and their families on the importance of managing potassium intake and levels. Over the course of the last 5 years, National High Potassium Awareness Day has gained significant movement, including nearly 100,000 unique visitors to the REOK website, more than 3.4 million reached on Facebook, 1.8 million reached on X, and more than 500,000 reached on Instagram. National High Potassium Day isn't just nationally recognized, it's gaining momentum at the state level too. Thanks to the support of AAKP ambassadors, we are beginning to secure the support of individual states through Governor Proclamation Days, recognizing May 1st as National High Potassium Awareness Day. Since 2022, we have been honored to have Florida, Texas, and Georgia recognize this Awareness Day at the state level. And a reminder, AAKP has a number of exciting events planned for 2024, including our 6th annual Global Summit on Kidney Disease Innovations, hosted in partnership with the George Washington University School of Medicine, Health Sciences, which will take place virtually July 16th and 17th. Our 7th annual Policy Summit is scheduled to take place November 20th at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and will also allow for virtual participation. Registration for both events is now open. AAKP's 49th annual National Patient Meeting will be a hybrid using AAKP's sophisticated virtual event platform, with the in-person component taking place in September in the beautiful state of Florida. The dates to be announced. And finally, you can also visit our YouTube channel to watch a number of great presentations and webinars, all available on demand from our 2023 events and programs, as well as 2024 programs as they occur. Once again, we would like to extend a huge thank you to our webinar speakers, Anna Marie Rodriguez and Chef Nina Curtis, for their engaging discussion on high potassium and tag teaming an amazing cooking demonstration. We are truly appreciative of everyone who participated today including our generous Are You OK virtual event sponsor, AstraZeneca. While National High Potassium Day is officially celebrated on May 1st, this is an issue that deserves attention all year long. Be sure to visit www.ruok.org for access to educational resources and on-demand content about potassium management in kidney disease. And don't forget to follow us at RUOK 5.1 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more updates and information. Thank you again for joining us. I'd like to close with a special video from our sponsor.
In my family, personally, we don't talk about our health. And without talking about this, it's hard to get diagnosis, it's hard to get treatment, it's hard to understand where you are with chronic kidney disease. So these are very important conversations that we must have.